concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, you guys? Welcome to the stream. It's Sunday afternoon. At least it's Sunday afternoon here. What time is it where you are? Let's just fill up the chat with that. Oh, are you guys ready? You guys excited? Good evening from Germany. WBO 6143. Woo. You know how we got to start the stream, right? I'm leaning hard. I'm leaning hard into that Mio sponsorship. Where's my, hang on, let me show you what I did. I pinned this to my Twitter, because I've heard that that's how you get a hold of brands and stuff, right? Is they'll answer you on Twitter. So I pinned this to my Twitter. I have a Twitter. I don't use it very much, but I have a, yeah. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Here we go. Now today we're mixing up something special. Today we got an adult beverage. Ooh. This is water, kids. It's water. Now, I learned about this drink from, I won some Tequila. It's tequila made here in Tennessee by, Smoky, what? Oh, heck. I'm sorry. Smoky Mountain Brewing Company? Crap. And it goes really good with this berry pomegranate Mio, I learned. Now, this is not the same Tequila, but, it is, it's Patron, so it'll do. Get a little extra squirt in there. Berry pomegranate. And I did remember to bring a lid down today so we can do the whole James Bond shaken not stirred thing. One of these days. It's going to go all over my computer. Woo. Okay. Oh, yeah. Berry pomegranate and tequila. Let's see. UFO pilot. I'm a grown-up. I do drink alcohol sometimes. Not today. I didn't spill. I have spilled on a live stream before. I have done that. Welcome to the live stream, you guys. Very glad you're here. I'm very glad to be here. I started my recent battery test video, which came out on a Saturday, and I sometimes like to joke about myself being lame. I was like, yeah, nothing I love more on a Saturday, on a Friday night than doing some battery testing. And the intent of the joke was just to be like, that's actually true. That is actually what I do with my weekends, is do battery testing and stuff. But some people read it as me being like depressed, like, oh yeah, here I am doing battery testing. Like I wished I could be somewhere else. So I just wanted to say I'm very glad to be here. I love hanging out with you guys. It's a privilege and a pleasure. So let's get into the live stream. No drinking and flying, says Johnny. Oh, that is really good. This berry pomegranate. Listen, Mio, you're really missing out. I could be such a good shill for you. This berry pomegranate. It's because it's true. This berry pomegranate, I don't actually love this flavor by itself. It's a little mild. You put a little tequila in there. Oof. Anyway, no drinking and flying, says Johnny X. That is true, Johnny, except that's if you're indoors, the FAA can't tell you what to do. FAA can't prevent you from drinking and flying indoors, and that is one of the reasons why if you ever go to an event like International Open, I just kind of sighed a little because maybe someday we'll all get to go to events like this again. If you ever go to an event like International Open, the Tiny Whoop tent is the place to be. Jesse Perkins, Mr. Tiny Whoop, runs a party like nobody else. And that's, I think, in large part, I mean, obviously Jesse is a great guy and he knows how to run a party and he's just really fun. But in large part, because Tiny Whoops, you can drink and fly if you want to. And that means you can have a whole different level of fun. So, here's what we're doing, guys. We had a race. We had a Tiny Whoop race at Buffalo Wild Wing. No, the Wild Wing Cafe. Got to get that right. In I think it was, I don't remember, last year. And Perkins came out. A whole bunch of people came out. And it was that the whole patio of the Wild Wing Cafe was us racing. And there is nothing more fun than racing and then going inside and eating some hot wings and having a beer or whatever, having an adult beverage of your choice or not, if that's how you no big deal. But just hanging out with people. The stakes are so low, and Tiny Whoop races are so... The Tiny Whoop races are weird because they're simultaneously, like, low stakes, everybody's having a good time, but also, like, nail-bitingly tense. You, like, really want to win, but you also kind of don't care if you lose, and you're just having a good time. Tiny Whoop races are really the best. Anyway, maybe someday. Here's what's going on, folks. Pavel Spakowski, welcome to the stream. I'm so glad you're here. Pavel Spakowski is here. 507RC is already here. 507RC wants to know what qualifies as indoors. I believe 507, if you have a roof over your head, you're okay, but I'm not 100% sure that you don't also need walls. I'm going to be monitoring your questions here in the chat. I'm basically just answering your questions and chatting with you for the whole stream. I will also be paying attention to these beautiful people up here in the upper right who are my patrons in the Discord server. I have a Discord server. It's open to my patrons, and I'll hang out there. And also, I'll be taking your super chats. If you want to make sure I get your question or notice your message, hit a super chat right here. Show your support. Throw a couple bucks in my face. That's what we're going to do for a couple hours. If you're new here, welcome. And let's get into it. What about smoking and flying? Asks Konstantinos Chiotis. I don't personally smoke. I kind of, with marijuana legalization happening all over the country, like, I'm not, you have a beer, have a whatever. I kind of like feel bad that I don't smoke because, like, whatever. It's legal. It could be fun. It's just not my thing. It seems like a whole lot of people get a whole lot from smoking, and it just is. Every time I have tried to smoke, I just cough a lot. It's just never been I just cannot do it. Anyway, every time I say that, then all the marijuana enthusiasts try to tell me, no, you're just smoking. Listen, you're just smoking the wrong kind of weed. Okay, and then they all try and tell me what I should be. No, you would really like it if you did. No, I don't. But a whole lot of I gotta say, a whole lot of FPV pilots do. FAA, cover your ears. There's definitely, I'm not going to name names, but yeah, smoking and flying. I mean, outdoors where the FAA has jurisdiction, not legal. Indoors, yeah, it's definitely a lot of people out there. A lot of people are referencing back to the Rotor Riot episode from years ago, where they did drinking and flying. Basically, they flew a race course and then they drank, and they drank to a certain degree of drunkenness, and they kept flying the course to see how much worse they got as they got drunker. They did it indoors, so it was legal. They did it with safety precautions. If I remember right, they had like a paramedic there to keep, make sure everybody was safe. And I remember Stingy said, he didn't say this in the episode, he said this afterwards. Stingy said that was the time when he realized how good of a pilot Steele was. Because Steele got drunk. Because Steele, at the time, Steele wasn't drinking, I don't think. He was like super vegetarian. He still, I think, is vegetarian. I mean, I don't keep track. I don't check in with him. But I believe he's still vegetarian. But he wasn't drinking, I think, either. But he drank for the episode. So he was like, had no tolerance and got completely shit-faced. And Stingy was like, and yet still he was a better pilot than all of us. That episode's still up on YouTube if you want to check it out and see. It's hard to imagine there was a time when somebody would be like, yeah, and then I realized this Mr. Steele guy was a pretty good pilot. But there you go. I think he is vegan. I don't know for sure, Jibba Jabba. Like I said, I don't like keep track of exactly what he does and doesn't eat. I know there's people out there who, like, literally they would say, I gotta, smoke a bowl before I fly just because it loosens me up. Not me. Maybe I'd be a better pilot if I did. Anyway. Welcome to the stream, parents. We're just going to start off with a whole bunch of talking about drinking and smoking. I try to keep it family friendly most of the time because I know the kids are out there and the kids like to watch my streams, but hopefully I haven't driven too many of you away. Quote, I can't even stand, but I can rip, Mr. Steele. Yeah. Let's see here. What do we got? Somebody is asking, who's asking? Jens Kleinschmidt is asking about GoPro settings. My personal settings for the GoPro. Get ready to write them down, kids. My personal settings for a Hero 7 or older. 2.7K, 30, Super View. ISO locked at 400 for maximum dynamic range, or locked at 100 for maximum motion blur. Your choice. Shutter speed auto, unless you can really control the lighting, which you usually can't. So you need the auto shutter speed to be able to control the exposure. ProTune on. Obviously, if you're locking shutter speed or ISO, then you have ProTune on. ProTune flat color if you're going to grade in post, which I would say gets you the best results. Use an ND filter depending on the lighting to get the amount of motion blur that you need, somewhere between ND4 and ND16, depending on how bright of a day it is. Okay, so you got all that? You write all that down? I would say that if you're using a Hero 8 or a Hero 9, they increase the bit rate. In a Hero 7, if my memory's correct, 4K gets 75 megabits per second, and 2.7K gets like 65 megabits per second. I'm going off of memory, so pardon me if those numbers aren't exactly right. But basically, you get way more bits per pixel with 2.7K. But on the Hero 8 and the Hero 9, you get like 100 megabit per second bit rate if you enable high quality or high bit rate mode. At that bit rate, 4K starts to make sense if you really need it. But the files are so freaking big, I'm not sure I could bring myself to do it. The other big question people ask is 30 frame per second versus 60 frame per second. 60 frame per second, obviously, sorry about that, gives you smoother video. But I like 30 frame per second because it removes some of the wobbles. So you'll actually get less jello with 30 frame per second than with 60 because it's sort of averaging out the frames. That's your call, but personally I prefer to fly 30. Anyway. So I do not fix the exposure. Hang on, let me turn my phone off. It's buzzing at me. It doesn't need to be doing that. I do not lock the exposure, and here's why. Locking the exposure... Hey, Siati. Siati FPV is here. Welcome to the stream, Siati. I don't lock the exposure because there is so much change in lighting when flying FPV almost all the time. So you'll go down into the trees and it's dark. You'll go up above the trees and it's sunny. And there's so much difference in that lighting that if you were to lock the exposure for under the trees, when you fly above the trees, it'll be completely blown out, and vice versa. Now, for a real professional shoot, locking the exposure will give you the most consistent results because it's super annoying when you're trying to do like a color grade, and then suddenly, boop, it's super bright. Boop, it's super dark. It's super annoying. It makes it very difficult to get a consistent color grade. Because what you'll do is you'll say, I'm going to push the highlights a little bit blue, and I'm push the shadows a little bit yellow, or whatever you're doing. But then when you fly up into the sky, suddenly the whole thing is highlights and the whole thing looks blue. So locking the shutter speed will give you the most professional results, but it doesn't work for your typical freestyle rip because the lighting changes so much. So you have to let something float. It's either going to be there's only three things that can float to control your exposure. One is the shutter speed, one is the ISO, and one is the aperture. A GoPro has fixed aperture, so you can't float the aperture. So the only thing you can float is the ISO or the shutter speed. Now here's the thing. You might think, why don't we lock... Oh, good point. Mayan, hi. Welcome, Lexi, to the stream. Lock the white balance. That's a good point. I didn't even think of that. But yes, definitely lock the white balance. For outdoors, 4,500 to 5,500 Kelvin is usually about right. Definitely want the white balance locked for if you're, especially if you're going to do a color grade, so that it's not changing throughout your flight. So talking about whether are you going to lock the ISO or are you going to lock the shutter speed? If you lock the shutter speed, you will get consistent motion blur, and that is good. But the ISO only has a few stops of latitude. The shutter speed has many more stops of latitude, which means that if you let the ISO float, you still will probably end up with an overexposed or an underexposed shot at some point in your flight. Obviously, this depends on your ambient lighting conditions. Like on a cloudy day where the light is relatively neutral and consistent, maybe you'll get away with it. But if it's a sunny day and there's strong shadows here and bright highlights there, you pretty much have to lock the ISO and let the shutter speed float in order to get usable footage. Yep, Lexi, that's the other thing. I agree. If you let the ISO float and lock the shutter, then when you go into a dark area, the ISO will go way up and you'll get lots of grain and lots of image noise, which people don't like. You can limit that somewhat by setting the max ISO in the camera, but then you're limiting the dynamic range of the camera, and that's so I always lock the ISO and let the shutter speed float, and then the effect of that on the footage is that the motion blur changes in darker areas where the shutter speed opens up. You get more motion blur. In brighter areas where the shutter speed stops down, you get less motion blur. But the idea is use an ND filter and you kind of just get it about where it needs to be, and then you cross your fingers. Now I really wish, yeah. I really wish GoPro would let you. Well, part of the problem is that GoPro won't show you the shutter speed. If you set shutter to auto, like how do you know what ND filter to use to get the shutter speed you want, to get the motion blur you want? Well, if you lock the shutter, if GoPro would just show you the shutter speed it was choosing, you could set the ND filter better. I wish they would do that, but they don't. All right. Now, Iraq Nafian says, I lock the shutter speed at white balance, but I let the ISO move between 200 and 400. The problem with that for me is that you've only got one stop of dynamic range. So I think depending on your lighting conditions, you still are going to end up with an over or an underexposed image. But I mean, obviously what works for you, that could work for some lighting conditions. Levente FPV wants to know, can I plug my flight controller into a power bank to start the GPS? Why would you want to do that? Here's why. Tell me in the chat if you know the answer. I'm going to go ahead with a chat delay. The chat delay means that by the time you start typing the answer, I'll already have said it, but then you'll get to feel smart because you beat me to it. The reason you want to start the GPS by itself is that the video transmitter, and especially something like a Caddx Vista or a DJI Air unit, makes so much electrical noise that it can make the GPS not be able to get a lock. Once the GPS gets a lock, it's okay. So a lot of people, what they like to do is they power up their GPS first, let it get a lock, and then they power up the Vista or whatever. If you plug in USB, does that work? It only works if you solder the power wire for the GPS somewhere on the flight controller that will get power when you plug in USB. So typically, the 5-volt pads on a flight controller don't power up from USB, because if you've got like a video transmitter or some LEDs on the 5-volt rail, you don't want them powering up and drawing too much power from your USB port. So what you should do is you should either find a 5-volt pad on the flight controller that powers up from USB, which oftentimes there's one 5-volt pad for the receiver that will power up from USB, or use a 3.3-volt pad. And in fact, that's actually what I recommend. Most GPS units, even if they're rated for 5 volts, they will perform better and last longer on 3.3 volts. So I would say always power your GPS from 3.3 volts if you can, and the 3.3 volt pad almost always, if not always, powers up from USB, and that means you can plug in USB, and there you go. Pavel Spakowski says it's not electrical, it's RF frequencies close to 1 gigahertz that jams the GPS. Interesting. Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't know what the Caddx Vista would be giving off that's close to 1 gigahertz, though. Like, are the camera wires close to 1 gigahertz or something? Regardless, set your GPS up so that it powers from USB. Then, with a USB power bank, plug your flight controller in for the first flight of the day. Wait till your GPS gets locked. Then to plug in a battery and power up your Vista or whatever. It's a great tip. I didn't come up with that tip. Other people did. Credit to those unnamed people. Pavel says that the CPU on the Caddx Vista or the Air unit runs close to 1 gigahertz and creates that noise. GoPros do it as well. Interesting. Very glad to see Lexi Jansen in the chat. Lexi and I have a collab coming out this week on my channel on the 17th. Everybody has the same idea at the same time, somehow. So when this video comes out and you go, so-and-so already did that video, just one of those things, just in the zeitgeist. Now I feel self-conscious because Pavel and Lexi both speak German. I said zeitgeist, which I think is a German word. I'm not trying to show off. That's just a borrowed word. So there's a whole bunch of people doing videos about going pro and how to get sponsored. Well, we did a collab, so that's going to come out on the 17th. Let's see. Cujo FPV in the Discord wants to know, Should we be buying the V2 DJI goggles for Christmas or waiting for the V1 DJI goggles for Christmas or waiting for V2? You probably figured out from the news we did on Tuesday. Me and Blunty did the news, and we talked about these leaks about the new DJI drone and the DJI FPV goggles V2. There were some FCC filings that basically confirmed that DJI goggle V2 and DJI controller and a DJI drone are coming. And the way a non-disclosure agreement usually works is it prevents you from revealing private information about the product. But if the information is public, it doesn't prevent you from talking about it. It only prevents you from revealing new information. Now, there's a gray area there where if you start talking about confirmed public stuff, you might accidentally confirm private stuff and violate the NDA. And I certainly don't want to get anywhere close to that line. But I feel comfortable saying anything that I have already said, which is, and here's the thing. Whenever you know that V2 of a product is coming, why would you rush to buy V1? Like, have you been following this whole business with the NVIDIA graphics cards? Probably, maybe some of you haven't. NVIDIA just released their 3000 series graphics cards, and as soon as the 3000 series was announced, the price of the 2000 series plummeted. Who's going to pay full price for a 2000 series graphic card when you know the 3000 is just around the corner, right? And everybody stopped buying the 2000s because they were like, how much better is the 3000? We need to know. So since the V2 goggle has been confirmed, it seems like you don't need to have proprietary information to think, I'm going to wait and see. Now, how much longer will you be waiting? I don't know. If you wait and the V2 comes out, will you be glad you waited, or will you be like, nah? Here's the thing. Even if the V2 comes out and you go, I'm not that impressed. Maybe you'll be impressed. You'll be, oh, I'm glad I waited. Maybe you'll go, I'm not that impressed. There's no doubt that the price of the V1 is going to drop once the V2 is out. That's just how economics works, right? I don't mean the retail price. I just mean that V1 goggle, people buying the V2 will be selling the V1 used, and so it seems like there's no brainer that once the V2 was confirmed, it's time to wait on buying the V1. And I don't think that's in any way like relates to a non-disclosure, because that is exactly what I would say about any product in the world once the V2 is confirmed. Yeah, so Raider FPV, that's the concern. Raider FPV. The concern is that if the V2 comes out and it is worse than the V1 in some way, like what Raider says is we're worried that remote ID will be embedded. The concern is that if the V2 comes out and it is worse in some way, then suddenly the V1 will be more valuable and you will wish you had bought it. That is the kind of thing where I have to just stop, because that's where I would get too close to the gray area of violating an NDA if I were to advise you. But now, some people are going to hear me say that and they're going to go, oh, that means it has remote ID. Hang on. This is not with a wink or a nudge. This is a strict no comment. I can't say more than I've already said because it would get too close to a line. You should not read that to imply anything except that it's getting too close to a line. If the goggles had remote ID in them and I were to confirm or deny that, or if they didn't have it and I were to confirm or deny that, that would be over a line. So Raider FPV is now gonna. I can't stop you guys from reading into that, whatever you do, but I wish that I could. Sorry. You should pay attention though. When I say no comment, I mean no comment. I don't screw around. I don't screw around with, like, wink wink. I don't screw around like trying to sort of weasel my way around an NDA. So, anyway, My advice is that you should wait and see. That's what I would say you should do regardless. Right, FPV wannabe. Just say I'm under NDA and I can't say. The problem is that everybody then reads into that whatever they are most afraid of or most hopeful for. Does the DJI Goggle V2 have HDMI out? I'm under NDA. I can't talk about that. Okay, so you're saying it does? I'm under NDA. I can't talk about that. Okay, but it definitely does, right? Hey, does the DJI Goggle V2 have remote ID baked in? Wink twice if it does. And I should buy the V1. I'm under NDA. I can't talk about that. Oh no, you're saying it does? I'm under NDA. I can't talk about that. It definitely does. Oh my God, you guys, it has remote ID. I'm under NDA. I can't talk about that. All right. I hope I've made my point. You should not read it. Starjumper says, there's no way it has remote ID. The technology isn't even developed yet, right? That's the thing. Remote ID, this is something I can talk about because it is a generic truth that is not dependent on any private information. Remote ID is an end-to-end solution. You cannot have a single piece that is remote ID compliant. Like, for example, could remote ID be baked into the DJI FPV system as we currently know it? The air unit has a digital connection to the goggles. The goggles have a digital connection to the controller. I don't know, like, how would they even... Can you even connect the DJI system to your phone so that it could report your GPS information? Like, I don't even know if that link exists. But the real weakness in the claim that the DJI FPV system is going to implement remote ID is Betaflight. As long as let's say that they made it so that the air unit won't work unless it has GPS coordinates from the flight controller, and in that way it is getting the data it needs to implement remote ID. Let's hypothesize that DJI did that. Betaflight is the weak link there because Betaflight's open source. You could download Betaflight and have it just fake the GPS coordinates. Oh, look, here is where I am. So that's why the FAA wants end-to-end control. Betaflight has no place in a remote ID compliant world because the FAA would never approve an open source hardware and software flight controller for a remote ID compliant drone because they know that you could just hack it and change it and lie and then defeat the whole system. And as we currently understand it, anything that is remote ID compliant will be a complete end-to-end solution that is reasonably tamper resistant to the end user. So this argument that somehow DJI is going to sneak remote ID into the FPV system, I don't see any way that the FAA would allow it as long as it works with Betaflight. So you're saying it's not going to work with Betaflight anymore? Is that what you're saying? I'm under NDA. I can't talk about that. Oh my God, he confirmed it. It was not going to work with Betaflight anymore. Oh, it's all over. I mean, Maya and High is asking questions like, well, what if you had a VPN or blah, blah, blah. The whole point is that the FAA wants the remote ID information to be correct and accurate. And they will, and in order for a system to be approved by the FAA, they have to look at the system and determine that it is accurate and secure. And if they don't make that determination, they will not certify the drone for sale. Anyway, the new DJI drone is an end-to-end device. I mean, the DJI drones typically are end-to-end devices. A Mavic, you absolutely could argue that a DJI Mavic could be remote ID compliant with a firmware update completely because it's end-to-end. Talk about the FetTech AIO. Crunked wants me to talk about the FetTech AIO. I do have I got the Mr. Steel quad back. The FetTech flight controller or the FetTech ESC is in it. There was something wrong with the wiring. VBAT was going where it shouldn't go. The whole wiring between the OSD board and the KISS flight controller. To the credit of the KISS flight controller, it still seems to work, even though VBAT was fed into a 5-volt wire, which would absolutely fry anything else. I still don't trust it, and I think I probably won't fly it because I don't want to risk it having taken some damage. But I am super, like, here's what happened. I plugged in USB to the KISS flight controller. I plugged in the battery, and as soon as I plugged in the battery, the COM port disappeared and the flight controller shut down. When that happens, you know you have a wiring problem. VBAT is going somewhere where it shouldn't go, or 5-volt, but probably VBAT. And then I started to smell that smell, like electronics getting hotter than they like to be. But no smoke came out, and the flight controller still seems to function perfectly. Nevertheless, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get the FetTech flight controller and put that in there. So my Mr. Steel quad is still not flying. I would like to point out, can I point out, I was looking at this, I just by chance came back to this product page. Can I point out, this is the Mr. Steel Ready to Fly bundle. Oh, look. Oh, look. Now they're selling it with the FetTech flight controller and ESC. How about that? Oh, the KISS flight controller and KISS ESC are fine. They're not going to smoke. Then they smoked on me. And now... how about that? Isn't that nice? Yeah, they were probably going to do that anyway. That probably doesn't have anything to do with my video. So good news, they've upgraded to the 45 amp ESC and the FetTech F7. That's a great upgrade. I fully support it. I think that's fantastic. And it's good to see. Doesn't KISS just work? Asks Mr. Shady. Well, I mean, nothing works if you put VBAT where it's not supposed to go. Don't you need a spike absorber for FetTech? Asks O-Town Dom. A spike absorber is a little thing you put on the ESC to help. It's like a capacitor in that it cleans up noise, but it works a little bit differently. It basically shaves off the voltage spikes only. I asked FetTech. I had a call recently with the guys over at FetTech. Thank you, Ghost Branch, for setting that up. And that's one of the things I asked them, because I knew I was going to be putting the FetTech 45 amp ESC in this quad. They said that the spike absorber is not mandatory. Since they said that, I'm going to run it without the spike absorber and see if it fries, because other people have said that they fried the FetTech 45 amp. But I am going to give it a shot. If they say you don't need it, I'm going to fly it without it and see what happens. Crunk says you don't need a spike absorber. It's a good idea, though. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to know. Stanley Frink says, is your go-to camera still the Runcam Phoenix V2? I mean, that's my branded camera. So it's obviously still very good. I am intrigued by the Foxeer T-Rex. I actually have one coming in the mail to check out. The Foxeer T-Rex has very high resolution. It's like 1,500 TV lines. People are saying it's good. I will say that there's more to a camera than just the resolution. There is the whole picture. And one of the things I like about the Phoenix is that it has Runcam's digital camera control, which I don't think anybody but Runcam has that, as far as I know. Which means you can connect the camera to a UART on your flight controller, and you can change the settings of the camera using your controller. So... The FetTech is made by the same person who did the KISS FC originally. It's a different owner and different company, as KISS Flyduino dropped the ball. Yeah, My on High, I'm a little curious. I'm not 100%. I should ask them this while I was on the phone with them, but we talked about other things. I'm a little curious about what's the relationship between FetTech and Flyduino. Flyduino is Alexander Feder, right? And he is the coder of KISS? But then FetTech makes the hardware? Is that the relationship? Let's get some super chats. Yeah, no, I have their contact info, My on High. Like I said, I had a call with them recently. I just thought I would, yeah. Just curious. FedTech has active current limiting. You're right, Steve, SMCFPV. That works to a point, but there's a limit to the spikes that it can protect against. Alex Fedorov does KISS firmware. That's what I thought. Can I convert my John Babowski? You're way over my head, man. Can I convert my Fat Shark head tracker from Futaba to JR by splicing the wires? Presumably, John, those head tracker cables are just carrying a PPM signal or a PWM signal. So presumably, yeah, no, it's PPM because it's the buddy box signal. Presumably, you can. Felix makes FetTech and used to work for Flyduino. So who is Flyduino then, if not Felix? Citrix wants to know, when should we expect more information about the Attitude V6? Well, good question. That's a good excuse for me to show you my website. Did you know I have a website? FPVknowitall.com is my website. Among other things, it is the home of the Ultimate FPV shopping list, which has all my product recommendations on it. Little plug for me there. But also it contains my editorial calendar, and I get it. You guys want a review of the Attitude V6. It is on the calendar. I'm going to get that out this week. So, yeah, Felix left. Then who's left at Flyduino? No one, right? Is Flyduino just dead? My on High? Let's get some super chats read. Oh my God, it's like 1:45. Wow, the time flies. I am sorry. Everyone who left super chats, it's your time to shine. Durzo FPV, thank you for $5. Do you have a good joke? Do I have a good joke? Oh, I don't. None that I can tell on this live stream. That's for sure. Anthony Eshivaria, thank you for a $10 super chat. I'm having an RXSR receiver issue with my iFlight Chimera analog. The RXSR does not power on when I plug it to USB, but it does power on if I plug a LiPo in. So, Anthony, not every flight controller will power the receiver from USB. Many flight controllers don't power the receiver from USB, and you just have to plug a LiPo in. Personally, I feel like this is a must-have feature, and I don't know why people don't do it, but many of them don't. So nothing is wrong. That's just how it works. Mads Tech, thank you for £5. Watched 3 vids of yours today on Betaflight 9F. Really appreciate the detail as you're covering some things I was specifically looking at. Stay safe, man. Thank you, Mads Tech. Glad to be of service. Do you have any idea when OpenTX 2.4 will be released? Ian S. asks. Yeah, any day now. Any day now for like 2 years. I was trying to think of drone-related jokes. Like, I can usually come up with a bad joke on the spot. Let's see. Here we go. Oh man, I gotta come up with one. Let's brainstorm ideas. Props. Why did the quadcopter spend so much time in the bathroom? Because it didn't have enough carbon fiber in its diet. Okay, I didn't say it would be a good joke. Hey, there's no criticism in the writer's room. This is a safe space. All ideas are welcome. Let's see. Anyway. Thank you very much, Aaron Unruh, for a $5 super chat. Redbeard the Pilot, thank you for a $5 super chat. Any thoughts on Betaflight 4.x on brushed whoops? And with Lexi on lockdown, any chance for a collab video or two? Good question, Siati. Redbeard. Good question, Redbeard. Yeah, Lexi and I have a collab coming up the 17th. So funny that you asked that. It's coming up this week. Thoughts on Betaflight on brushed whoops? I can't remember the last time I flew a brushed whoop. Yes, I can. It was the newbie drone Hummingbird. And the Hummingbird shipped to me with silverware on it. And it was pretty freaking amazing. Betaflight can fly well. I mean, Project Mockingbird is still doing... oops, nope. Project Mockingbird has switched to Emu Flight. Whoops. Okay. I'm going to go with the pros. If Project Mockingbird thinks Emu Flight is superior, because Emu Flight has implemented some whoop-specific features that specifically make them fly better. So if Project Mockingbird is running Emu Flight on brushed whoops, and Newbie Drone is shipping silverware, I guess Newbie Drone still ships some Betaflight. That seems like I just got to go with what those guys are saying because they spend a lot more time working on that stuff than I do. Stanley Frink wants to know about RSSI. Any reason why my RSSI for Crossfire is never at 99? It starts at 40 to 50, but it's never at anything higher than 50. Why might this be? Stanley, in the command line, in the Betaflight command line, there's an option RSSI _scale. RSSI scale. If that for Crossfire, RSSI scale should be set to 100. If somehow RSSI scale got set to 50, then it would be cutting your RSSI in half. Now, I don't know how that would have happened, but that certainly could explain it. But bear in mind also that RSSI drops off non-linearly. So up close, there is a very fast drop-off in RSSI, and then as you get further away, it slows down. So you should not expect to see Crossfire RSSI at 100%, even when you're very close together. You probably are going to see it at 80 or maybe 90% or maybe a little less. And that's normal. And as you go a few feet away, 10, 20, 30 feet away, it'll drop off way faster. So like 30 or 40 feet away, maybe your Crossfire RSSI has gone down from 80 or 85 to like 60. And you're like, oh my God, what? Because you're like, you're thinking linearly, and you're like, I'm only going to get a couple hundred feet of range before it fail-safes. But it is a non-linear drop-off. So to go from like 60 to 55 to 50 is going to be, kilometers. Okay? It's one of the reasons why RSSI is often translated into percent using some synthetic algorithm, because people don't think in exponential units very intuitively, and we always tend to think linearly, and we get really upset and confused when we see that RSSI dropping off so quickly up so close. Now you're probably thinking, but wait, isn't Crossfire known for 100% RSSI? That's because Crossfire's RSSI, under some conditions, it's actually a combination of RSSI and LQ. And since LQ is usually great, even when RSSI drops, it just shows 99%. But RSSI, yeah. So, but RSSI, I would expect to be higher than 50% at some point. Family Guyver says, up close, I'm at like 78. Yeah, that's normal. That's completely normal. Any thoughts on the iFlight Success DF7 30x30 stack? X Crazy Canuck in the Discord. Well, I bet I could come up with some. Let's take a look. 66D F7. F7 flight controller at 50 amp ESC for about $100. That's reasonable. It's not budget. It's reasonable. Obviously, iFlight flight controllers, I'm a fan of them. I mean, dual gyros, very nice. If you don't like it, or if you have a bad gyro, you can always turn one off. I don't know why the hell do they say this? It's an F7 flight controller. You don't need an inverter for S. They all have inverters. Do they put a... I don't know why they do this. Did they do this? Show me the pinout. Surely there's no... Where's that frickin'... Can I see the pinout, please? Where's the wiring diagram? iFlight. iFlight! Where's the wiring diagram? Oh my goodness. Can I just see that frickin' pinout? No. Dagnabbit. Well, come here. Come here, you. How about this one? Oh my goodness. I just want to see the pin labels. T2, R2. Yeah, there's no inverted UART2. It's an F7 processor. Everything is inverted. Everything is capable of being inverted. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say. I like the... Obviously, it's... iFlight makes my flight controller, so obviously I like their design. I like their pad layout. I think it's a really flexible pad layout. Interesting choice to put the USB on top. Not everybody does that. Yeah. I mean, I kind of... Nothing stands out about it. It's just kind of good. It's how I like things to be. But, you know, nothing like super remarkable. Maybe I've just gotten so used to iFlight flight controllers that I'm like, yeah, that's how it should be. The big question with the ESC is it going to be a good, durable ESC? Scroll down. What is there to see if I scroll down? Top grade MOSFETs. iFlight is making really good hardware, that's for sure. Michael Nelson, I usually go for about 2 hours. Then Ciotti takes over on his channel. Archimedes says there's a new Paul Van Dyke stream to listen to in the background during JB's live stream. Wow. I mean, I am a multitasker. I'll always put something on in the background while I'm doing something else, but to put a stream on in the background while you're listening to a stream, streamception, dude. That's a little too much for me. Oh, man. Yeah. People asking about a day at the range. So is it true that a day at the range shut down his Patreon and his Discord? Can anyone confirm that? A day at the range is the guy who was supposed to have invented an HDMI out and then for the DJI goggles, and then supposedly DJI paid him off and bought the rights, and then he developed another method supposedly and was trying to sell access to his Patreon, and then people told me that his Discord is shut down, his YouTube channel vanished. So either it was a scam and a money grab, in which case I'd like to remind you that when I talked about his Patreon, I said I am not endorsing this, or DJI had him whacked. You know, one of those two. I mean, how much do you think he got? He took the money and ran. I wonder if he got a letter. Yeah, Ciati, I'm leaning that way. I mean, I think the version of the story that I feel is the most likely, for whatever that's worth, is that he did in fact come up with a method of getting HDMI out of the goggles, and DJI did in fact pay him off. And then he came up with the second version, and I was like, dude, didn't they pay you not to do this? And he was like, nah, don't worry, my lawyer says it's okay. And the version of the story that I choose to believe in is that he got a letter and they were like, you can't do this. And he was like, oh crap, I'm about to get sued to oblivion. And they just shut the whole thing. He just shut the whole thing down and tried to disappear. That's the version of the story that I think is most entertaining. Yeah, Twin Turbo Stag, he definitely owes the people who paid him an explanation. I just think by the time you've nixed your whole channel, you're probably not going to get it. And frankly, at this point, if you go incommunicado without telling your patrons what's going on, if you just disappear, I mean, I wouldn't trust another thing from him again. Because, like, if he's taken money from people, you at least owe them a message. Like, okay, he's at risk of getting sued, so he can't talk. You at least need to say, hey guys, I'm shutting down the project. I'm sorry. You can refund the money. Patreon will let you refund the money to a certain point anyway. You could try to make it right as best you can. And if what you did was just disappear and make no attempt to refund the money, like if he comes out of the woodwork and is like, hey, here's what, I mean, I don't think I would, yeah, I don't think I would have anything else to say to him at this point. Ghost Branch says DJI paid him off. And then he came up with a V2 and DJI was like, and this I do not forgive. Yeah, maybe so. Rudra Krishna, thank you for 40 rupees. Pro Z1 Full, thank you for $2. At what RSSI will the power increase dynamic equals on? Pro Z1, I don't know the RSSI thresholds for power. It's probably an LQ threshold, not an RSSI threshold. I don't know the threshold, and I don't know that that's been published. Mike Bergman, do you know how to wire Crossfire to a Transtech Beetle? It has 4 UARTs. But it says that Crossfire requires external connection. I don't know about that, Mike Bergman. If it has 4 UARTs, take a TX and an RX pad for any UART and connect it to the Crossfire receiver. It shouldn't matter. Aber the Ham, thank you for a $5 super chat. Is 50 amp ESC sufficient for a 7-inch running 2507 1850 kV on 5S? Thought about using 4S, but that would pull more current. No, Abraham, I disagree that 4S would pull more current. You are correct for a fixed number of watts. A lower voltage pulls more current, but the problem is that when you decrease the voltage, if the kV of the motor is the same, then when you decrease the voltage, the RPM goes down. So in general, if you don't change your motors, using a lower voltage battery results in lower watts and amps, if that makes sense. Also lower thrust. A 50 amp ESC is probably sufficient for almost anything because the battery is the limiting factor. So you got to ask yourself, am I going to be pulling 200 amps from my battery? If you're using like a 5S 1300, a 5S 1800, maybe even a 5S 2000, if you think about it, a 2000 milliamp hour battery, 200 amps is 100 C. How often are you really going to be pulling that much current from your battery? Probably not that often. So 50 amp ESC is probably sufficient. The question is just how much headroom you want. Carlos Botros, thank you for a $5 super chat. Go subscribe to JB's Patreon. Oh, thank you. If you're into FPV and you ain't subbed, then what are you doing? Good question. What's the best motor for a ductless diatone Taycan? Is a Taycan too heavy to suggest a 2004 motor? What do you think, chat? Ciati, you still here? Nick Sebring, you got an opinion? I have been so impressed with the 2004 motors on the Catalyst Machine Works Shocker. Those are 4-inch, to be fair. I know that like 1404 is a common size, or 1507 is a common size for, yeah, Ciati says 2004 all day. I know that 1507 and so forth are very common for Cinewhoops. I feel like 2004s are better. But I wonder if there is a use case where suddenly the 1507 makes more sense. Ciati says he has 2004s on his 480-gram Cineglide. Ciati says he would go 2204 on a heavy Taycan. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I feel like those 2004s are better for lighter weight ones. As you're getting up into the heavier quads, something like a 2204. But 2204 for like a 3-inch prop, or is a Taycan a 2.5-inch? Are you sure that 2204 is going to be like the optimal? Are they going to come in the right KV? Chris FPV, are you serious? Or are you just pulling my leg? 2306.5 for a freaking 3-inch prop Cinewhoop? I don't know about that. Mayan High, Skadoosh and Mayan High. Are you talking about Warwick? Yeah. Oops. Underground FPV. Speaking of people who ghosted the quadcopter community, Underground FPV disappeared. Warwick said he had a house fire, and basically then a month later the company was the domain name was sold to another company that like is link farming the website, which is how I knew that Underground FPV was definitely gone. And Tony Cake commented publicly that somebody asked when will Immersion RC Ghost be supported on the Nirvana, and Tony Cake was a little bit salty and was like, yeah, if only Underground FPV hadn't screwed us. By the way, I don't know if this is true. I'm just repeating a public comment that Tony Cake made. Tony Cake, the owner of Immersion RC. But Tony Cake said basically that Underground FPV ordered a bunch of stuff and then didn't pay for it and was a little annoyed. Which is somewhat consistent with the claim that Underground FPV had like a house fire. I mean, if the guy had a house fire and had to go out of business, I guess that happens. Businesses go out of business and end up owing creditors money. So I don't think that makes Warwick a bad person. That just happens. Businesses declare bankruptcy and creditors who they owe money to are screwed. That happens. I don't know if Underground FPV officially declared bankruptcy or if they just sort of disappeared, but yeah. Nirvana firmware with ghost support does exist. That is correct, Pavel. The question was when Immersion RC, I think it's a third party that the guy who's doing the Nirvana firmware built it in. But I think they're asking for official support. Lunchbox, yeah, whoops. Lunchbox FPV, another famous example. We're just talking about a rogues gallery of FPV. Lunchbox FPV had this Tiny Whoop Lunchbox project that he was working on. And it was a really cool little box that had a built-in screen and held your Tiny Whoop. And I don't know the details, but basically took a bunch of money and then didn't deliver the product, is the short version. Pavel Spakowski says, well, you can't get more official since this guy is the only one who is developing for the NV14. That's true, but I mean, in theory, isn't Nirvana supposed to be supported in OpenTX 2.4? Haha. When OpenTX 2.4 releases, any day now, with support for the Nirvana, then hopefully his efforts will no longer be required. So that's what I meant by like official support. Nick Sebring says for that Diatone Taycan Emax RS 1606, that's the direction I would go. Nick Sebring, far be it from me to disagree with a guy like Aaron Ciotti when it comes to micros, because Aaron Ciotti's the master of micros. Am I right, ladies? Sorry, Ciotti, I could resist. But my first thought when you talk about a Cinewhoop is a motor like a 14.0. I don't know, 1408, a 1507, a 1606, somewhere in that size and shape. 2004, to me, it feels like the Cinewhoop might be a little heavier than you'd prefer for like a 2004. I'm open to being wrong. Ciotti suggests a 2204, which is that's a motor I haven't heard about in 5 years. We used to run 2204 motors on 5-inch props, and we've gone a long way. But I would be like thinking about a 1606. Ciotti says the Emax 1606s are great, but too notchy. Especially if you're concerned about smoothness, that notchiness is going to get in the way. Pavel says there's a pretty good chance this firmware is FlySky sponsored. Yeah, I know FlySky was depending... My understanding is that FlySky was depending on Underground FPV to develop and support the firmware. And then when Underground FPV went out of business, the firmware was left adrift. If FlySky was then sponsoring this guy, what's his name? Can we put a name to him? But this guy who's doing the Nirvana firmware development, that would be a good move on their part. Still, official OpenTX support means a lot to me. You know what I mean? Ghost Branch, which guy are you talking about? Lunchbox? Warwick? Day at the Range? When you say, Ghost Branch says he seems like a genuinely nice guy. Jakob, thank you. Jakob is his name. Jakob, thanks for your work supporting the Nirvana NV14. Who are we talking about? We were thinking for some time that he just got arrested by China. Yikes. For those of you watching the replay, I hope that you're seeing a chat replay. For a long time now, for weeks now, the chat replay has been missing on my live streams. This is something that happened in YouTube on the back end. I see other channels complaining about it. I also see other channels have a live stream chat replay for recent live streams. I don't know why or how, but I did try remaking. Normally I copy my live streams from each other. So if something was wrong with my live stream settings, I copied for this live stream. I did not. I created a brand new live stream for this one with brand new settings, and maybe we'll have a chat replay. That would be amazing. Still talking about the Lunchbox guy. Gotcha. I don't remember Lunchbox's name. Brandon J, thank you for your comment. I finally got all my first-time drone stuff today and flew it for the first time, the DJI Nazgul. It was so awesome. Thanks for all the information you provided. Amazing experience. I'm really glad to hear that, Brandon. That first time getting up in the air, man, you just can't recapture that feeling, the awesome feeling of flying. Yeah, that's really something. Why is the Nirvana radio not more popular, L. Leston? At least I'll tell you why I stopped talking about it, Leston. It's because when Underground FPV stopped supporting the firmware, I didn't feel good about promoting the radio, knowing, I mean, currently this Jakob guy is doing great work keeping the firmware up to date, integrating new features like Immersion RC Ghost. No one knew that he was going to do this at the time. Underground FPV was supposed to be the ones releasing... So actually, Underground FPV would say that the OpenTX devs were supposed to support it. There was maybe I shouldn't repeat rumors. One version of the story, which I will share unsourced, and therefore you should give it exactly that much credibility. But one version of the story that I heard was that the OpenTX devs were supposed to support the Nirvana radio, and the OpenTX devs decided not to do that. And there were some accusations that that was related to FreeSky having too much pull with the OpenTX devs. The OpenTX devs have commented on this and said that in order for them to support hardware, there are certain things that they need, and that they didn't get those things. So there's a lot of back and forth about who exactly was supposed to be releasing firmware for this radio. I think I remember a conversation with Underground FPV where Warwick said something like, yeah, you know, we weren't supposed to be the ones doing this development, but now nobody else is doing it, so we're doing it. And then Underground FPV went out of business. And at that point, basically no one was developing firmware for this radio. So at that point, I was like, I'm not going to talk. In fact, I took my videos down because people were watching the videos about the Nirvana and going, whoa, this is a great radio. I'm going to get this radio. And I was like, I can't leave people. They're not going to get the message that this radio is basically adrift. And then, so now this Jakob guy is doing a great job keeping firmware updated. Immersion RC Ghost support. He added it. Well, if he wasn't doing this work, then you wouldn't be able to use Immersion RC Ghost or a multi-protocol module or all these features that are being added to OpenTX. The Nirvana would be a 1.5 year old radio with none of these new features. And thank goodness he's doing it. But I just didn't feel good about promoting the radio without it having official support. So anyway, that's why I stopped promoting the Nirvana, and maybe that's part of the reason why it's not more popular. It does have a weird form factor that doesn't jibe with everybody. I want to be really clear that there's a whole lot of, like, hints and allegations, if you will, and I don't know if any of this stuff is true, but hearing the different versions of the story is interesting. Nick Sebring wants to know if I'm going to be doing battery testing on an Ovonic battery. I prefer, Nick, to have manufacturers send me batteries. I didn't used to do it that way, but the problem is it costs too much money to buy all the batteries that I want to test. Credit to Race Day Quads and Get FPV, who just sent me like 15, 20. Race Day Quads sent me like 40 batteries, no charge to me, in order to test. Get FPV sent me 20 or so. My preference would be to have a manufacturer just send me a bunch of batteries to test. I have been trying to make that happen. AU Line, Gold Line. Their name apparently is Gold Line, but they spell it AU Line, like AU is the chemical symbol for gold. Gold Line, no one is going to get your clever joke. This is a terrible idea. Everyone is going to call you AU Line, and if you go around calling yourself Gold Line, everyone will search for the word Gold Line, and no one will know to search for AU Line, and no one will be able to find you. Do not give your company such a clever name that your customers cannot find you with a Google search. Okay, marketing advice over. Am I on high? Am I about right? My preference is to get the batteries from the manufacturer because they can just send me 20 batteries and I can test them all. The spreadsheet is not useful if there's just like 1 or 2 batteries. It's most useful if there's all the batteries, and in order to do that, it costs a lot of money. Some people say, well, what if the manufacturer cherry picks the batteries? I mean, I don't think that's terribly likely, but it is not impossible. I think if you're getting packs from, I think the most likely thing is that they just pull the batteries off the shelf at the warehouse. They don't, it's not like they have these secret cherry-picked cells that they're going to send out to reviewers. That's not impossible, and there are situations where that has happened in the past in other areas. I heard Linus Tech Tips. Linus, I talk about him a lot. He's one of my favorite YouTube channels right now. He said back in the day, manufacturers of USB flash drives would make ultra fast flash drives that they would send to reviewers. And then they would get a great review, and then they'd send cheap ones to customers. I just don't think there is enough. Like, who else is doing battery testing like this? Like, nobody. Barely anybody. So the idea that they would have these cherry-picked cells that they would just send to reviewers, I don't think it's likely, but I can't be sure it's not. But the flip side is that in order to get a blind test, I would have to spend, you know, how much would it cost to get 40 batteries? Like $800. Let's say 40 batteries. Let's say an average of $18 a pack. It's $720. It's just so much money. It's, to me, it's more valuable to be able to get the batteries and test them for the manufacturers. I think if they had better packs, they would just sell them to you. That's the thing. If China Hobby Line has this super awesome chemistry that they've come up with, they wouldn't just keep it on the shelf and send it to reviewers. They would just sell you that one. That's what I think. I could be wrong. Correct, Perry Earl. So now here's the flip side. Should we conclude that the manufacturers who don't send me packs are not willing to, they're not willing to trust the results? That doesn't necessarily mean that they're scared. They might just think I'm a schmuck. You know, they might just be like, "Ah, nah, I don't care. I'm just going to sell packs to people, you know, based on marketing." And, you know. So eventually, I probably am going to end up buying some packs. But I would prefer to pressure manufacturers to send me packs because I don't want to spend $700 buying 40 packs to test. That's a lot of freaking money. So. Ryzix in the Discord wants to know, how do I find out what the steps are taken for a flight controller to initialize, like the booting process? I mean, Ryzix, the basic thing that'll happen when it starts up is it'll go doo-doo-doot, doo-doot. And that's the ESC starting up. The doo-doo-doot means the ESC has power. The doo-doot means the ESC sees signal from the flight controller. And then the last thing you'll hear is it'll go doot-doot. That's the flight controller beeping. You won't hear that, by the way, if you don't have a buzzer. And that means the flight controller, the gyro, has initialized. Those are the basic things. That's the other thing. Wrong Way FPV says, I have a pile of dead gold bats. That's the other thing. AU Line and Gold Bat, I don't think are the same company. So that's also confusing if AU Line wants to be Gold Line. Wrong Way says, I have a pile of dead gold bats. The internal resistance always goes crazy after about 6 months. Yeah, so another thing we are not able to do, just because of the time involved would be insane, is cycle testing. The battery test machine we use is West Mountain CBA4 with a 2 kilowatt load bank. And the CBA4 is like $150, but it only goes up to like 10 amps, and, I don't know, 150 watts or something. The 2 kilowatt load bank brings the price up to about $4,000. But it still doesn't have the function to do cycle testing. It has the ability to switch a charger on and off, but it can't, like, the charger has to just automatically start the charge cycle when you turn it on, and there's no LiPo charger I can find that you can preset the parameters, like charge at 2 amps, that you can preset the parameters, and then as soon as it powers up, it just immediately starts charging. So I don't really know. So we're not really able to do cycle testing, unfortunately. What about batteries stored on the shelf? Batteries stored on the shelf, if they're at storage voltage, there's almost no degradation in performance for storing batteries on the shelf at storage voltage. They're very safe to store, and their performance stays basically the same. El Padre 2019. I love Pavel Strakowski. He is awesome. And if you love his content, I encourage you to watch it. But if you say well, I'm not going to read that comment out loud. If you say that in my chat, you are fired. You are fired. You don't have to like me. But if you come into my chat and you don't, and you're welcome to say that you love Pavel or you love Ciati. They're awesome. These guys are awesome. But if you just literally insult me in my channel, you're at it. Bye-bye. You're gone. You are fired from my channel. I don't need that. Bardwell can't take criticism. That's not true. You can criticize me. Lord knows you do. I don't have such a fragile ego that I ban people from the channel for criticizing me. I argue with you. And then I go to bed and I'm like, oh, that guy's probably right. He's probably right. I do suck. And then I spend all night thinking about it. And then I get up the next morning and I argue with you some more. That I will do. But if you just insult me, there's nothing to engage. There's no criticism there. You suck. Hey, you suck. Okay, bye. You're not bringing anything to the conversation. You're not helping people. You're not helping the viewers. You're not making my content better. You're just being insulting. And I don't really think there's any place for that. And so there's this thing you can do where you do hide user from channel, where basically all your comments don't show up, but you don't know that unless you like look with another account. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I do suck at cars. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. Can I put it in quotes? Oh, come on. Come on. There you go. No. Quotes don't work. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I was hoping to see more maybe they're pre-filtered. Huh. Okay. Nobody else that needs banning. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. This guy's okay. Dude, you rock, but sometimes you suck. This time you suck. Okay, that's at least like it's on the line, but that's okay. I mean, that's at least like a nuanced comment. Nope. Okay, good. All right, just thought I'd check on that. Ox Apex says JB tried to find negative comments. Turns out the community loves him. It's just because I've already banned all the negative people. I do that. That's one of the few things that will just get you insta-banned from my channel. Not just insulting me, but like if you are just straight out, I start by deleting comments unless there's just a trend. I start by deleting comments. If you're just insulting somebody else in the comments, like if you're like, you know, you're a dumbass, like there's just no place for that. There's nothing constructive about that. It's just, you're just insulting the other person. We can have a disagreement. We can have an argument that there's potential for constructive, positive outcomes from that. usually it doesn't work out that way, but I mean, I'm not willing to stifle free speech because an argument gets heated. Because there's the potential for a positive outcome. But if you're just literally you're fat, you're ugly, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're a dumbass, just no, there's no place for that. So I usually just delete those comments, whether it's me or somebody else. But every so often somebody comes around and is just like, you're dumb, your content is shit, I don't know even why I watch this. And I'm like, why are you watching it? Anyway. Whatever, you're here. Okay. P. Lund, thank you for 10 Swedish kroner. Peter, I can't read your last name. I apologize. I see the letters, but I'm sure that I don't know how they're pronounced. What do you think about the Fat Shark Scout? Thank you for 400 Hungarian florin. Fat Shark Scout? Let's look at it. Fat Shark Scout. This is the... which one is this? This is a really solid box goggle. It has updated DVR. It has a patch antenna built in. It's a really solid box goggle. The thing is, it's a $200 box goggle. You got to know you want a box goggle to pay $200 for a box goggle. Now, if you really want to pay $200 for a box goggle, this is a solid box goggle to get. It doesn't have the biggest screen, but it's got a solid feature set, and of course it's got Fat Shark's reputation for quality and support. But you got to really want, I mean, a lot of people are going to be happier going up to the $300 price point. Oh my God, that is like, it's 50% more money. It's a big jump. I think most people who buy box goggles do it because they can't get up to the $300 price point. And you can get a really, the thing is, the Eachine EV800D is not quite this good, but pretty freaking good. It's half the price. EV800D is half the price, and it is more than half as good. So, if you are a lover of box goggles and want the best, the Scout should be on your list. But not many people out there love box goggles that much. Pilot Extreme, thanks for 2 Canadian. Just looking forward to the Mobilite 7. Me too. It is winter. Chris F, thanks for a $5 super chat. Kema FPV wants to know my opinions about the hexacopter from Flywoo. Yeah. The Flywoo is a hexacopter. It's like the Flywoo Explorer. It's a 4-inch hexacopter, and it has a 6-in-1 ESC. And I got to tell you, lately I have been feeling a little bit like I've taken on too many products to review. My favorite way to make content is to wake up in the morning and go, like, what do I want to do today? And that's fine, but at the end of the day, I work for you guys. I work for myself. I got to keep myself happy. But if all I ever did was exactly what I wanted to do, like you guys are like right now, like, oh, can you review the Attitude V6? And on some level, I'm like, well, I could probably sum up my opinion about the Attitude V6 in a paragraph. But you guys want to see a review for it, and I gotta, I can't be like, forget it. I only work for myself. So product reviews are a service to the community. Sometimes it's a product I'm super interested in, but sometimes it's a product you're super interested in. And I go, okay, it's time to pay the bills. But this freaking hexacopter, Flywoo, people have been saying, hey, do you want to review this product? And I've been like, look, I'm really stacked up on product. I really need to get out from under this pile. And Flywoo came to me with this hexacopter, and they were like, we got a new hexacopter with a 6-in-1 ESC. And I was like, okay, you got me. Okay, send it. A 6-in-1 ESC. Okay, shut up. Just put it in the mail. Pavel Spikowski says, hexacopters are heavy and do not deliver any pros for freestyle or racing. The big advantage of a hexacopter on a bigger quad is that if you lose a motor, it can stay in the air. It fails down to basically a quadcopter. You're 100% right. Shut up. Just shut up. There was a guy who built a 3-inch Octo that we flew for a Rotor Ride episode, and that was surprisingly good. It was stupidly complicated because it has two 4-in-1 ESCs. The frame was ridiculous, but it flew really good for a 3-inch in a way I didn't expect. And then Alex Vanover just smashed the crap out of it with a full send. So I think that we're going to conclude that there are no advantages to this hexacopter compared to the quad, except that you see a hexacopter and you go, whoa, that's really cool. Do motors often fail in flight? No, it starts they don't. The only reason you really care, and who cares if they do? If you lose a motor on a little 4-inch Flywheel Explorer, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's not like you're flying an expensive DSLR camera or an expensive cinema camera, and if you lose a motor, you're going to crash $50,000. That being said, I just love the sort of mad insanity of Flywheel. Like, are there any other 6-in-1 ESCs out there? I don't think there's a single one. What's the benefit of the extra 2 motors? Shut up. The benefit is shut up. Okay? It's shut up. That's what it is. It's a 6-in... Shut up! It's a 6-in-1... It's a 6-in-1 ESC? A 4-inch hexacopter? Why are you not... Why are you... Stop being skeptical and just be impressed. No, I know. That's not the attitude I'm going to take into my review. Excuse me. I will be skeptical and credulous in my review, but for the moment I'm just like, yes, 6-in-1 ESC, tell me more. DJC Money. I couldn't get my RSSI to bind to my X9 Lite after watching your video, and now my radio is broken. Oh, crap. You know what? You've just reminded me, DJ. There was someone out there I was going to do a freaking call with, a one-on-one call to fix their problem. And we were trying to schedule the call, and now I have lost contact with them, and they think I've stood them up. Wow, I suck. I'm sorry about that, whoever you are. Your radio is not broken, DJIC Money. You updated the firmware. I'm going to guess you updated the firmware on your X9 Lite to whatever, and you didn't update the firmware on the RXSR, or you flashed the wrong firmware. DJC Money, email me, joshuabardwell@gmail.com. I will help you get that sorted out. You're fine. There's just a simple mistake that you've made. It's easy to make a mistake. We'll get it sorted out, man. We're not going to do it on a live stream, but I will help you get that sorted out. Just email me. Okay. How do you set motor direction on a hex pile of carbon? I don't know the motor mapping off the top of my head, but like 3 motors clockwise, 3 counterclockwise. That's the short version. Let's see if we can find a motor mixing table. This is not for Betaflight, but this gives you some idea. Octo Hexa here, yeah. So here's the different hexacopter mixers. You have 3 motors going one way and 3 the other way. That's basically it. You always need the same number of motors going clockwise and counterclockwise to keep the yaw torque neutralized. Diesel Girl, thanks for $5. Hexacopter, Octocopter Love. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Colin Renault, thank you for $5. Thanks for your help putting throttle on a switch. It makes 3D flying so much better. Colin Renault had a question. He wants to fly 3D, but instead of having the throttle at 50% and then up and down being positive and negative, he wanted to be able to pull a switch to switch the motor direction and have his throttle be normal. We sorted that out. Chris F., thanks for a $5 super chat. Thanks for all your great content, Joshua. I left a super chat the other day for the first time. I've left super chats all the time on like FPV people's live streams just to say hi and help support them. But I have a gaming YouTuber that I like watching. I've watched him for years. I'm a member of his Patreon. And I left him a super chat the other day just to tell him how much I appreciated his content and a little personal note about the effect he's had on... I'll tell you about it. My kid, I started watching this guy like 5 years ago. So my kid would have been like 4 years old, and he wasn't really gaming much. And now he's gotten into gaming, and he's played Fallout 4 several times through. First game he ever played all the way through. And I left this guy a little note to say, hey, I started watching this guy's channel on some of his Fallout playthroughs, and me and my kid watched his Fallout. One of the videos I got into this guy's channel with. Now my kid is into Fallout, and we watched it together, and was like, oh, this is really sweet. Sharing this guy just making YouTube videos about Fallout. Now it's had an effect on my relationship with my son, so I left him a super chat to tell him thank you. And it was really it was like, I was kind of like bashful about it. I was like, but I was like, this guy doesn't know who I am. Why do I care? But I left him a super chat because it felt meaningful to tell him. First time I ever did that. There you go. Mike's Adventures. I'm not personally ignoring you, Mike. I read, like, just because of the nature of the live stream, I only get to read very few of the comments. But I just saw that one. Oops, now it's gone. Hey, Mike, Mike, Quad Whisperer, or anybody who feels like I'm ignoring you. Number one, I'm not ignoring you. Okay. And number two, if you want to make sure I get your comment, there is a thing you can do to make absolutely sure that I see your comment. There is a thing you can do. It's right down here. You just hit that $sign. And you send a super chat. Boom. And then I will almost certainly get your message. Or just randomly, I'll see your message, like just now. And then I'll talk about you and embarrass you for a while. Tolkien FPV, what's up, man? Archimedes, the gamer I'm talking about is Many a True Nerd. I don't know if that's going to ring any bells for you guys. You can find him on... He's my Patreon supports are public. You can find him on my Patreon. I do get a lot of comments, and I can't see them all. It's true. Karen's JW did a throttle mode on one of his 3-inch drones. Have done a few without an issue, but then this one, it would rev the motors higher and higher when you flip the flight mode switch. Never did figure it out. Karen's JW, did it happen with the props on or with the props off? Motor speeding up with the props off is a normal thing. Any recommendations for a 5-inch build? My budget is $250. Crisp taters. The iFlight Nazgul V2. It's not the only good ready-to-fly budget, whatever, but it's at a price of about $200. It's just stupidly good. The Gepar C Mark IV is another solid one. There are many out there. I guess this is an opportunity for me to plug my website, so I should. FPVknowitall.com, home of the ultimate FPV shopping list, which has all my product recommendations. It's not the only good thing in the world, but it's a few things that I feel like rise to the top of the list. There's a section in there for ready to fly, bind and fly drones. We go to bind and fly here, and let's look for a 5-inch top tier freestyle basher. Why is the Sedora only of $279? That's a little out of your budget. There's the Sedora SL5E, and that is, I think, being replaced with the Nazgul V2. I'm not sure about that. So I would steer you towards the Sedora SL5E or the iFlight Nazgul V2. That's where I would steer you. Have a couple bucks for shipping. Tyler Johnson, thanks for a $5 super chat. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to plug your future sponsor, Milo's Iced Tea. I'm really hoping for the Mio sponsorship. Milo is just to make Mio feel jealous. Coelho FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. Tuned in late. Keep up the great work. Happy holidays. Happy holidays to you. By the way, folks, if you take a look at my YouTube schedule, very good of you to mention that, Coelho. Speaking of the holidays, if you look at my YouTube schedule, you can now find my live stream schedule. If you go to my channel, you can find my live stream schedule here. Where's my freaking live stream schedule? No, I gotta open it in. Incognito window. Yeah, you can find my upcoming live streams. There will be a change in the schedule for the holidays. So pay attention to the scheduled streams. Right now it's scheduled through the 20th, so I haven't actually gotten to the holidays yet, but there will be some Sundays and Mondays off going through the holidays. So definitely gonna miss you guys, but definitely pay attention to the upcoming live streams. That's where you can always find, people are like, when do you stream? And I'm like, well, it's Sundays at 1 and Mondays at 8. But in addition, if you're still not sure, you can always go to my channel and go to this upcoming live streams and find it there. P. Lund, thank you for 10 Swedish kroner. And Chris F., thanks for $5. I think I'm caught up on the super chats now. If I missed yours, I apologize. Let me know in the chat. Siati will pick up the difference, yeah. I'm actually going to go on a little vacation with my family. Where can you go on vacation these days? Yeah, basically we're just going to get a Airbnb somewhere like an hour from our house and just hole up in an Airbnb for the weekend, but it'll be like a vacation. Tim M says the OSD shows armed, disarmed once and hasn't since. Project Hummingbird V1. Where should I look first? I hate that I can't see it. Yeah. Man, it is tough. It is tough to troubleshoot Hummingbird from the Hummingbird because it has silverware firmware on it, and you can't just plug it into a computer to get status readouts. If you've got a Hummingbird, I would suggest you reach out to Newbie Drone support. There are some things that you need to do, like you need to have your channel set up right and so forth. So Newbie Drone will have the basic troubleshooting steps there. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about silverware to tell you like the 3 things you should check if Hummingbird isn't, or Mockingbird isn't working right. DJ C Money. I said, email me and I will help you fix your radio. Get off my nuts. I can't. You broke my radio. Okay, number 1, I didn't break your radio. The instructions that I gave in my tutorial work when you follow them correctly. Now, if something is different about your radio or your receiver that caused my instructions to not work, we will figure it out. But you have to stop being salty and being a dick about it, because that makes me think that you are not interested in solving your problem. You are just interested in just getting up my butt. And that will now put me in a bad mood, and then I will be annoyed at you. So, stop. I will help you. I will literally get on a freaking Zoom call, and I will help you fix this problem. I don't do that a lot, but if you're trying to follow my tutorial and your radio's not working, I understand exactly how freaking annoying that is. And I want to help you, and I will help you. Except now it's going to be super weird because you're being a jerk. So let's just stop. Let's hit the reset button. I'm sorry your radio isn't working. I'm sorry you tried to follow my tutorial and now your radio isn't working. That sucks. I know exactly how frustrating that is. Let's just hit the reset button. Email me. Stop making shitty comments in my chat about how I broke your radio. Let's work together to fix the problem. I will help you. We will fix it. It will be fine. And when we get an email or on a Zoom call, it doesn't have to be weird or awkward, because we're going to hit the reset button now. Okay. I'm sorry your radio's broken, man. That sucks. It really sucks. You want to fly, you're trying to follow some guy's tutorial, your freaking radio doesn't work. I had one guy once who accused me of intentionally putting bad instructions online because I like breaking people's... I'm having flashbacks to that conversation. Let's just fix it. Let's just fix it. Take a breath. Don't be salty. We're just going to fix it, dude. We're going to make it right. It's going to be okay. Not sure says, I feel like I'm being yelled at by a CC in the Navy again. Wow. I mean, I'm not sure if I should take that as a compliment, but I kind of do. No problem. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'll email you. No problem. We'll just fix it, dude. It's okay. I get it. I get it. I just hate it when you... No, we hit the reset button. It didn't happen. Thank you. Just email me. We'll fix it. It'll be all right. Irish says, get him on the Discord. We'll help him. The Discord is open to patrons only, I'm afraid. If he chooses to become a patron, then the Discord will help him. I will also just help him for free because I care about people. Because I fucking care about people. You think I do this because I'm trying to get rich? I just care about people and want to help them. There's no better way to get me on a Zoom call than to convince me that, like, you're just sincerely trying to follow my instructions and now your radio's broken. So. Oh. I just want to, and we'll fix it. We'll fix it. No, Patrick Harness. It's not your job to solve all the problems. You shut up. I can solve all the problems. I'm going to solve them all. Psych Limbo, thank you for a $2 super chat. Rule number 1, be nice to people you want help from. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think what happens is that people assume that I don't give a crap and I'm just going to leave them hanging. And so then naturally, they're just mad. Because they're like, I was trying to follow your tutorial, now my stuff is all effed up, and now I'm just screwed. But you're not screwed, because I will help you. So you don't have to be mad. Felix FPV, we did talk about a day at the range. That one guy, though, he was a piece of work. I argued with him so much, and he was 100% convinced that I intentionally messed up his radio, that I intentionally put out bad instructions because I like to maliciously trick beginners. And I was like, dude, you are so far gone. You are so far gone. This guy, like, might have had some kind of a paranoid disorder. What do you think about the Hi-Fi on RC F7 stack? Martin B, if this is the stack I'm thinking of, me and Blunty talked about this in the FPV new product roundup. Yeah, I think we talked about this one in the new product roundup. So here's the deal. Is this the same one? I guess I'm not 100% sure. It's 70... No, this is the 30 by 30. There's a 20 by 20 version of this. Hi-Fi on RC, I have no idea who this is or what kind of quality the product is. That's the iffy part. Is this a solid piece of gear? The company is, to me at least, it's new enough that it doesn't have a reputation. I mean, if they've been around for years and I just never heard of them, then I apologize. But that's the situation. They have a 20 millimeter stack that really impressed me. How about an F7 20 millimeter stack? See if I can find it. There it is. Hi-Fi on RC F7 Mini. It's $60 for a 20. That's an amazing price for an ESC and flight controller 20 millimeter f7 with a 45 amp rated ESC, if this is a solid piece of hardware and doesn't just crap out on you or have quality issues, this is a heck of an impressive piece of hardware for the price. So don't know. It's people are saying in the positive things in the chat. That's nice. You need a little bit of time for something to kind of hit market saturation before you really know. But I am super impressed with the capabilities. The pad layout is okay. With a 20 millimeter stack, it's tough to get an ideal pad layout. It is nice that you got the DJI plug. You could solder up the motors. You could probably be all right. If I were building my own quad and I wanted a 20 millimeter stack and I was on a budget, I would consider taking a punt on this one. Because at a price of $60, it's pretty freaking compelling. Yeah. The 30 millimeter coming in at like $80. What was it? $80, $90? How much? F7 Pro V2. Oh, well, that's from AliExpress. You can get it for $65. Where's the 30 millimeter? The 30 millimeter one coming in at $70 is less compelling because I think there's other 30 millimeter stacks out there in that, well, with an F7, I don't know. I think there's a little more competition in the 30 millimeters market. I think it's less compelling. But the $60 20 millimeter with an F7, that's pretty compelling. Steve K, very interesting question there. Can I turn the 10 volt filtered out pin on the X-Rotor flight controller into a 5 volt by putting 5 volt instead of 10 volt into the input? Let's look at the pinout on this flight controller and see if you can do what you're asking. The question there is whether it is passing through the 5 volt or whether it is actually has its own regulator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the pinout for the ESC plug, if I can find it. Okay. Nope. Manual? All right, let's look at the manual. Hello. There we go. You just need the pin out for the ESC plug. Can we have that? Oh, here we go. Okay, so yes, the answer to your question is yes. Can you see that on the ESC plug, there's a 10 volt input? So if the flight controller had only a... Oh, wait a minute. No, damn. So here's the problem. The flight controller doesn't have a VBAT. No, my bad. Sorry, back up. I'm working this through in real time. I apologize. This is the DJI plug. Never mind. Here's the 4-in-1 plug. Okay, so we got a VBAT input on the 4-in-1 plug. And that means that most likely the 5 volt regulator is powered off of VBAT, which comes into the flight controller. We also have a 10 volt input. And I'm going to guess that if we look at the ESC, it has a 10 volt output. So that means that 10 volt is probably just being passed through from the ESC, while 5 volt is probably being generated internally from VBAT. So here's how you could test this. You could feed it VBAT only, like pull out the 10 volt wire from the plug. Just slide it out. Use like you just lift the retention tab and slide out the 10 volt wire. Plug in the flight controller. And what you will probably see is that the 5 volt pads are live, but the 10 volt pad is not. At that point, you know for a fact that it is just passing through 10 volt, and you could feed in any voltage you want on that 10 volt pin and have that appear on the 10 volt pads. However, if what you want is 5 volts, why aren't you just using the 5 volt pad? Yeah. The other problem is that if you feed 5 volts in here, the DJI Air unit will get 5 volts on this 10 volt output, and that wouldn't work. But maybe you're not running DJI, so it doesn't matter. The question that I always wonder on these guys is why? Why didn't you put a 10 volt regulator on the flight controller? Well, maybe you didn't have room. Why did you put a 10 volt regulator on the because T-Motor does this too. Why did you put a 10 volt regulator on the ESC, pass it through into the flight controller? I don't know. It always kind of weirds me out. Hobbywing just has this plug for some reason on the G2. Yeah. Steve K says both 5 volt and 10 volt. Oh, no. Well, Steve K, I appreciate your input. So that's the test I said to do, is feed it VBAT and see what happens. Steve K says that the flight controller actually runs off the 5 volt and the 10 volt input, which come from the ESC, that the flight controller itself doesn't have a regulator on board at all. And the VBAT input is just for sensing VBAT, so it knows what battery voltage is. So that's why I said feed it VBAT and see what you get on the 5 volt pads. If the VBAT input is a sensor only, which very few flight controllers are built this way, then when you feed VBAT in on that pin, you will not get any, the flight controller will not power up, and you will not get any voltage on the 5 volt or the 10 volt wires. At that point, you know that the 5 volt and the 10 volt regulator are actually on the ESC. You could still do what you're talking about doing, though. You could still feed it 5 volts or 9 volts or whatever you want on that 10 volt wire. DJC Money. Joshua Bardwell at gmail.com is the email. Would it work with other flight controllers which have the ESC telemetry pad? The ESC telemetry pad, no, you can't feed voltage on the ESC telemetry pad. What does the current pin on the Hobbywing ESC do? And is it different from ESC telemetry? PropWash FPV asks. PropWash FPV, the current pin is for analog current sense. So the ESC knows how much current the motors are pulling. The flight controller needs to know that information to put it in the OSD so you can have current readout and milliamp hour readout. Current is analog current sense. The voltage varies from 0 to 3.3 volts. The alternative is ESC telemetry, which is a digital protocol. They both report the same information, just one is analog and one is digital. I think in today's world, ESC telemetry actually doesn't make much sense because all of the things that ESC telemetry does are done some other way, except for temperature, ESC temperature. Okay, so who cares about that? We are just 2 minutes till the end of the stream. Man, I've just been going hard today. I don't know why. The time has just flown. Thank you guys so much for being here. Gel Capitaine, I am going to test TBS Tracer. I haven't got it. I've ordered it. I've got a back order in. Whenever they didn't send me a pre-release batch, and they haven't sent me one yet. They didn't send me one before release. And I said to Trappy, hey, I don't know. I mean, Trappy was a little bit annoyed that Ghost was getting so much attention when Ghost first came out. And I was like, hey, you know, it's a hot new product. What do you want? And then Tracer comes out, and I said to him, listen, I'm not making Tracer content, and I want you to know that's because I don't have it. No, I'm not like trying to strong arm you, but I can't make content about a product I don't have. So, for the record, I still don't have it. I don't mind buying it, but I can't make content about it if I don't have it. So, Ciati, you're fine, dude. Ciati, you're fine to start posting that 10 minutes before the end of the stream, even if I don't call you out. I appreciate it. It's very respectful of you to wait till I call you out, but you're good, man. We're going to be finishing up the live stream. Ciati is going to start streaming on his channel. He's posting the link. Gadrius Vizdunas, sorry for mangling your name. Why didn't you get a Tesla instead of a Mustang? If the Tesla Roadster was in my price range, I might have considered it. The Tesla model, I wanted a sporty car. The Model 3, yeah, I know. The Model 3 will outperform my Mustang in every metric, but that's just not what I wanted. So, the Tesla Roadster is too freaking expensive, though. It's way out of my price range. Anyway, Teslas are awesome. Don't get me wrong. I will be back 8 p.m. tomorrow, but for now, it's time to sign off. It's 3 p.m. Thank you guys for being here. Hang on. Psych Limbo, thank you for $2. Among Us today, yes. I'm about to go. I'm going to go take a little quick pee break, and then I'll be playing Among Us on the Discord server with my patrons. Sign up on my Patreon at the video description if you want to play with us. And Steve K, thanks for $5. Mike's Adventures, thanks for $5. James Flores, thanks for $5. You helped me on FB a few weeks ago with my Roma F5. It's awesome. That is going to do it. It won't beat the Mustang in mileage. Yeah, it depends on how you count mileage. Range, no. You'll have to charge up the Tesla. Anyway, that's going to do it, guys. I'll sign off and let Ciati do his thing. Good luck, Ciati. Have a great live stream, and I will see you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. Happy flying, everybody.